Hello and welcome into this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. We are both, even though it looks like we're both in the same clubhouse, in fact, we are not. I am in Boynton Beach, Florida, Pine Tree Golf Club, primo venue for golf's longest day, final qualifier for the U.S. Open. Rex, I believe you're in Springfield. It looks miserable. It looks gray. How are things going? We're recording this in between the two rounds. Obviously, it's 36 holes. We now have about 3 or 4 hours to kill until we have to do our advancing interviews. How are things going at this point?
It's actually beautiful here the last 2 days, really. It was really hot all week long at the Memorial over in Columbus, which is about 40 minutes from here. And it was just scorching hot. I mean, I think you saw it on the telecast.
I'm in South Florida. Let's be realistic here.
No, actually, I looked at it a couple of times, and it was actually warmer and more humid in Columbus, Ohio, than it was in Orlando, Florida, a couple of days last week. So it was brutally hot. And I think you saw that with the golf course. Muirfield Village played really different this year. It was firm. It was fast. We never get those conditions. But it's actually beautiful now. The last 2 mornings here have been, I think it was 47 degrees when I showed up, and it is cloudy. But I think the players would probably want it that way. If you're going to walk 36 holes, it's probably the best conditions.
Who is at your qualifier? I know by the time this posts, we'll already know who has advanced into next week's U.S. Open. But for the folks at home, who are some of the players that you are coming into contact with?
It's kind of the beauty about the qualifier, right? It's probably some players that you've never heard of. I mean, one of the players you probably have heard of is Troy Merritt. He's right there. He's qualified through this venue twice before in 20 and 2021. Kramer Hickok, obviously a PGA Tour player. He shot 4 under. He's right there in the mix. So yeah, Dylan Wu, I think he was at 7 under. He had the first round lead. So you had some names that were familiar and some that really weren't familiar, which I think is kind of the beauty of
Why would you ever go to a qualifier in which there's PGA Tour players?
Well, this one's kind of weird, and I'm going to talk around this because I don't want to upset my friends at the Miami Valley Golf Association that do a really good job and are sitting right next to me right now. But so this one is a little weird because it's so close to Columbus and the Memorial. And like I've done it the last 3 or 4 years, and they, of course, have the big qualifier over there. It's 2 courses. Todd Lewis, Andrew Bradley, super producer, is over there. But this one gets a lot of spillover from that one as far as tour players go, and you're starting to see more and more guys decide just to make the drive over. Like JJ Spawn was in my hotel last night, and we were talking, and he was telling me that he normally plays Columbus, and the reason that he sort of changed gears this year is, first and foremost, it's only one golf course. You don't have to worry about the logistics of bouncing back and forth and having to scramble 20, 30 minutes to drive over to whatever the other golf course is. In Columbus, you only have to learn 18 holes instead of 36 holes. And you are kind of competing against, I mean, if we're being honest, it's an 87-player field. Probably only have to beat, if you're a PGA Tour player, 20 of those guys. So you have to like your odds. Normally they give about 7 or 8 spots out to the U.S. Open. This year it's down to 5. I think all the venues are down. But this one has a good amount of PGA Tour pros in it.
Yeah, it is interesting. So we've just have like a bereft of star power here in South Florida. We were supposed to have Daniel Berger make it a rehab start. He's not played on the PGA Tour in nearly a year. He ended up WDing late last week. We're supposed to have Fred Biondi, the NCAA individual champion. He ended up turning pro and is making his pro debut this week on the Korn Ferry Tour, thus forfeiting a spot in next week's U.S. Open. It's still a possibility, especially by the time that this podcast posts, that the USGA does the right thing and gives him a special exemption, as they did with Rose Zhang after winning the NCAA championship. Turned pro, USGA turned around and gave a special invitation to get her into the U.S. Women's Open. Hopefully they do the right thing and do that with Fred Biondi. And Matthew Wolff, one of the 2 live players, who is supposed to tee it up here at Pine Tree. Obviously, we all remember the 2020 U.S. Open. Looked like it was going to be a historic feat for him. Ended up finishing second there. T15 the following year at Torrey Pines has since gone to live. And there's a lot of rumors, speculation about what happened currently with Matthew Wolff. He had live stripped from all of his social media channels. There's a lot of speculation that Brooks Koepka has kicked him off the team. So I was actually genuinely looking forward to catching up with Matthew Wolff on Monday here in South Florida. That will not come to be. And so, yeah, we have a lot of relative no names, a lot of players on mini tours, a lot of players just trying to start
Take it easy.
Their pro careers Carlos Ortiz is in the field, and at least through the morning wave, looks like he should nab one of the 3 spots that is available here. Rex, you just covered the Memorial Tournament. It is very noisy there. Apologies to our friends who are listening to this in an audio medium. I sure hope by now that you would have learned to at least mute your microphone or perhaps find an alternate location. Absent of that, it was a very compelling final round of the Memorial Tournament. Rory McIlroy shared the 54-hole lead, ended up shooting 75. We're certainly going to get to Rory here in a second. But this was the Denny McCarthy-Viktor Hovland duel that no one saw coming, no one anticipated. What were your thoughts on Sunday from a fast, fiery, baked-out Muirfield Village, which is just the way that Jack wanted it?
Nowhere else for me to go here at Springfield Country Club. It's a very small clubhouse, and I looked around, and I just noticed this. Wait, it's on the other side here. So this one right here. No, that's not right. This one right here. There you go. It's brought to you by, there it is, the letter 5.
The number 5.
This podcast is brought to you by the number 5. There's nowhere else to go. I apologize for the noise. It's ambient noise. Consider it just, we're in the press room. Consider
just
this
just pick your microphone up then. That would certainly cut it down.
I have a hard enough time keeping the microphone plugged in. I don't think you want me tinkering around with it. It was interesting with Rory McIlroy taking a share of the lead into the final round because, and I wrote this on Saturday night, the idea that the 3rd-ranked player in the world going into the final round against some players who you would argue outside of Siwoo Kim really didn't have the resumes that you would think on paper would match up. And yet everything that Rory said didn't fill me full of confidence at all. He sounded like Dave Chappelle when we asked him about his chances on Sunday. He was like, well, I mean, I'm in the lead, but we'll see. Like, it was kind of like, you're the world's 3rd-ranked player. And he was kind of crystal clear on this one. He did not talk around it. He does not feel comfortable with the swing. He's made the decision to make these changes, and that's a fine. Talk about not muting a mic. That's when you mute the mic.
Sure.
That's a fine. Yeah, $5.
In hindsight, absolutely should have just muted myself. Yeah. Didn't though.
That's not the professional thing to do. And I would argue that in his particular, you did it again. Oh, it's a visual medium. I can see you cover your mouth.
Muted. Nailed
it. I would argue that he's been very, very clear about these swing changes that he's decided to embrace midseason. And look, he talked about it last week, that I know this is not the time when you want to do these with all of these big events, the major championships, the designated events, the playoffs coming up. But he said he just felt like he had to do it at this point, that it was just something he had to embark on. And he was really clear last week saying that, look, I've been going in the wrong direction for 6, 7, 8 months. It's going to take more than 6, 7, 8 days for me to turn this around. Like, this is
he was playing some of the best golf of his career last summer and last fall. Finished top 8 in every single major championship last year. Got back to world number 1 for the first time in a handful of years.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically just shut it down for 2 months, which he has a right to do. But to say that he was going the wrong direction with his swing is certainly surprising. It just seems like he got off earlier this year.
Well, actually, he said it started creeping in at the end of last year, and you can point to like the CJ Cup, which was in the fall. But now you get towards the end of the year, he probably took December, November, didn't spend a lot of time playing golf. And again, when he embarked on this season, he wins in Dubai to start the year. He finishes 2nd at Bay Hill.
Didn't play particularly well there. That was kind of a short game and putting that bailed him out.
Sure. And I think what we saw at Muirfield Village, which is shocking, you can look at what he does off the tee, and he's still Rory McIlroy. I mean, he's still the same version that he always was. He's dominant off the tee with the driver in his hand, even at a place like Jack's place, and Jack tries to take the driver out of your hand as much as possible. The part that was shocking to me is how many wedge shots would not hit poorly. Awful. Terrible. Unbelievably bad. I mean, we're talking about from 116 yards, 96 yards, and he doesn't, let alone get it close. He doesn't hit the green. He's putting himself in terrible positions. He can't get up and down. That, to me, I think speaks to where he knew his game was and what he knew he had to do.
He actually showed some signs of progress with his driver. It has not been the typical dominant driving year that we've grown accustomed to seeing Rory McIlroy over the past decade, but he actually hit the ball off the tee quite well. I believe he was 3rd off the tee, strokes gained among what was obviously a star-studded leaderboard at Muirfield Village. As you mentioned, the last 2 rounds, the weekend rounds at Muirfield Village, were terrible. His approach play, his proximity to the hole was terrible. His distance control was really bad. He hit just 7 greens on Saturday, hit just 9 greens in the final round, just putting way too much pressure on his short game to try to save himself. And so, yeah, I think he's he's not quite as sharp as he would want to be heading now into his title defense at the RBC Canadian Open, and then obviously next week at the U.S. Open. I did see at least some signs of progress with his driver, which does imbue me with a little bit of confidence. He can get some competitive rust off this week in Canada and be a little bit sharper as we head into the year's third major.
And I kind of did this last night. I actually did a column on Scottie Scheffler, which we can get into in a second, but I was sort of taken with the idea, and I sort of just did a breakdown capsule of the top 5 players, top 5 at that moment. They've changed. Viktor Hovland moved to number 5, but the top 5 at that point and sort of where they are in their games at a very crucial point of the year. As you pointed out, the U.S. Open is in 2 weeks. And I sort of walked away.
Rahm got dusted by Scottie on Sunday.
I mean, it was really kind of amazing to me because you can kind of go down the list and none of the 5 are playing particularly well. I mean, there's bits and pieces of all 5 that you can point at, and I mean,
none of them are foolproof, if that's what you're saying.
And maybe
Scheffler is not playing well is a mass overreach.
I would argue that, and again, Scottie's sort of an entirely different story. It is statistically impossible to do what he did on Sunday, to hit the ball as well as he did. He gained more than 20 strokes on the field.
It's not statistically impossible. He's been doing it for the entire year.
No. That's the second best in the shot link era. That's only behind Vijay Singh back, I don't know, a decade ago, whatever the case may be. He was so dominant and yet he puts himself in the lead only because he's dead last in putting. That's the part that's statistically impossible. That even though he putted still awful, terrible, whatever adjective you want to use, he still found a way to put himself into contention, and he had to kind of wait around and see how it was going to play out with the playoff. That to me is amazing. And I know there's a level of frustration, and I'm sure at this point he's trying to stay as calm as possible because that's sort of Scottie's MO. We all learned a lot about him watching the Netflix special, but at some point that's got to eat at you. I think we did, more so than others, I would argue.
I felt kind of underwhelmed by the Scottie part, but that's not completely a surprise. Like, what was your favorite?
I think that's what we all learned about Scottie.
What was your favorite stat from last week as it pertains to Scottie? Was it the fact that he lost 8.5 shots to the field on the green?
Yes.
Was it the fact that he didn't make more than 54 feet of putts in a single round? Was it the fact that he didn't make a putt longer than 9 feet across 72 holes, and yet he still just finished a shot outside the playoff? What do you think is going on here? Is it confidence? Is it a stroke issue? Is it the fact that his swing coach, Randy Smith, is recovering from back surgery and probably is not as hands-on as he typically is? Because, boy, I mean, we're talking about squandering 4, 5, 6 great chances to win golf tournaments with putting that isn't just average. It's not even just poor. I mean, this is bottom of the field level negativity when it comes to Scottie Scheffler. Like it's borderline emergency.
I'm going to dismiss the Randy Smith thing right out of the gates because Randy and I had a long talk about this at Oak Hill when Scottie started playing well early in the week, and he pointed out that he really hasn't worked with him on his putting in a very long time, really since he was a kid. He said putting is something that's very personal to Scottie. He said he's always kind of embraced it himself. He goes, look, he'll bounce ideas off of me, but it's not as though we sit down and talk about the mechanics of putting.
I mean, they had an animated discussion. Remember on the putting green at Augusta National?
They have animated discussions everywhere. It's sort of Scottie's MO, and it's sort of Randy's MO. Like, that's why I think they fit so well together, that Scottie's going to push back and Randy's going to push back, and they've been doing this since he was a teenager. So I don't think any of that is out of the ordinary. I would say it's more of a confidence thing at this point, because speaking with him on Sunday when he walked off the course at Muirfield Village, he went through his card when I sort of brought up the idea, do you feel like you're close or do you feel like you're miles away? Like, where do we stand in all of this? And he almost went hole by hole saying, well, I left this one on the lip and this one was, just right edge. And he felt like he pointed to one putt. He went through all 18 and he pointed to one putt on number 10 from 3.5 feet that he missed, didn't even touch the hole, that he wanted back. And the point there, at least in his mind, was, and this is probably what the best players do to themselves all the time, he's convinced himself that he's putting well. They're just not dropping right now.
He keeps saying, I'm hitting good putts, and they're just not falling. I mean, I don't think there's nothing else he can say publicly. Privately, he may be freaking out. Publicly, you can't say anything other than I'm hitting good putts, and eventually it's all going to even out.
I think there was a moment when I did ask him because Thursday and Friday he spent about an hour on the putting green after his round. And you asked me which stat stood out. So I thought 42 feet of putts made on Thursday was really, really bad, and as opposed to the rest of the field and the tour average, it is really, really bad. And on Sunday, when he was 6 under par, and as you pointed out, made a run at the lead, he made a grand total of 43 feet of putts. So keep in mind how bad this is. I mean, the only putts he's making are essentially tap ins. I don't know, after every round he would go to the putting green, and he's tinkering with putters now, and he was even putting with a lob wedge. He said it helps him release the toe. All of it is starting to reach a point of desperation. And to your point, they're wasting great opportunities for victories here. I mean, the idea that you can hit the ball that well week in and week out is probably not realistic. And so you would think he needs to find some sort of fix soon.
I mean, it's been a really, really good year. I mean, he won the Players' Championship, defended his title in Phoenix, has had countless other opportunities. It could have been an insane stretch of golf with how good his ball striking has been, had he just been average. And look, he's always been a pretty good putter. I think last year was the outlier in terms of how well he putted. That was probably the outlier from his career. But if he just improves a couple of shots per tournament on the greens, which law of averages you would kind of expect him to do, boy, I mean, he's going to rip off win after win after win. That's how well.
You mean if he only gives 6 shots to the field on the greens instead of 8.5? 5
just
shots
be average, just be middle of the pack, just be mediocre on the greens.
And he was top third
dominant with his
on tour last year.
Right now.
He was top third on tour last year, and I think he can get back to that. But at some point, it becomes concerning. Again, this is the idea of going through the top 5. Keep going down the top 5. I thought what I saw Patrick Cantlay was even more concerning on Sunday. I watched him warm up a little bit on the range. This trainer came out. It was kind of disturbing when you consider that Colin Morikawa did something in his warm-up and tweaked his back and wasn't able to play. And then you look at Jon Rahm, who just kind of seemed flat. I mean, look, it's not as though I think Jon Rahm, I wouldn't put him in Scottie's territory, because it's not as though he's doing one thing really, really poorly. He's just not at his normal standard. We've already addressed Rory McIlroy's wedge play. You can keep going down the list. I mean, and I don't even know, Xander Schauffele is probably the one that I feel like is rolling along at a decent enough clip that I would point to and say, yes, I really, really like him at LACC.
You mean my PGA Tour Player of the Year pick, who does not have a single victory this season? Him?
Yes, that's the one. And of the top 5, I think if you look at least, and again, this is a recency bias, and it's what have you done for me lately? But these are the top 5 players, and you're just not seeing the production out of them. He finished second. You can't take anything away from Scottie Scheffler, but man, that's a glaring second.
So you highlighted all those players, and I completely agree. I don't think any of them right now are all systems go like we saw Rahm, right? Like in January, February, every time he teed it up, he was going to be dominant. The player who is playing the best right now, indisputably, and is now actually closing out golf tournaments, is Viktor Hovland.
Yeah.
Second to last group at the Masters, final group at the PGA Championship, took Brooks Koepka all the way 16th hole, had that unfortunate break in the fairway bunker on 16, had a kind of fade on Sunday at Colonial, but he backed it up at Jack's Place with a really good round. His short game is still a little bit of a concern. I think we kind of talked about this at Oak Hill too, why Viktor Hovland was up there. Having long, thick, dense rough around the greens actually helps mitigate some of the struggles that he has. The struggles he's going to have is pitching off really tight, grainy Bermuda, kind of using the bounce in the club. That's what he's still learning.
You like what they have at LACC?
Under Joe Mayo, yes. So, like, I saw a Phil Mickelson tweet that said, like, you have to put Viktor Hovland now, if not the favorite, among the favorites. And look, I agree. I don't think you can have Viktor Hovland any worse than 5 on your list. But that is going to present a different challenge around the greens than Muirfield Village did, than Oak Hill did. And so I'm very curious to see how he did. However, I did think that the Memorial victory was validating for Viktor Hovland. Good resume. He's won kind of in tropical locales. He's won abroad, but to win on U.S. soil with as stout of a test as that is after so many close calls, it felt like a big moment for Viktor.
No, and I think there was a really cool moment in the press center after the victory on Sunday and Jack Nicklaus does a really neat thing, and he's in there with the winner's victory, and he's kind of almost narrating it, and it's a lot of fun, and to have him there talking about his golf course and the way this particular player played, and Jack was almost in awe of listening to Viktor talking about, look, I knew this was a problem early in my career. I knew I could not continue to stand over chips and realize that, man, there's no way I'm going to get this anywhere close. He goes, if I short-sighted myself, I knew it was a bogey already, and how he sort of worked his way out of it. I'm going to do full disclosure here. And look, this is 100% honesty. I did a radio interview Sunday morning, and they were kind of rifling through,
for free?
Do you like to? Yeah, I did. It was pro bono work. Most of what I do is pro bono work. And they were sort of rifling through do you like this guy?
Albuquerque,
like
hello.
No, this was actually in Vegas, which is, I get really, really nervous because then they start talking about gambling. Like, I'm better than you are, but not by much. So it gets a little scary. And they asked me point blank about Viktor Hovland, and I made this face since it's a visual medium. And the
scrunchy face for those.
The scrunchy listening. Face. If you think of it as a scrunchy face emoji, that's exactly what I look like, with my face glowing red. And simply because of the reasons we just pointed out, I just don't have any faith in his short game. And look, he hit some chips Sunday at Muirfield Village that lead me to believe that, man, I still don't have a lot of faith in his short game. As you pointed out, Granny Bermuda is not his friend, and that's what he's going to have at LACC. But I'm coming off that opinion more and more every day. And I don't even think he had to win yesterday. Certainly that is an impressive feat, and sort of gets me.
I do. I thought
it gets me thinking in the other direction.
Had to close out a golf tournament, especially
that level. And look, if it was Rory in the playoff, and maybe I would have held it to a higher standard, but that's still pretty good. I mean, this is an invitational. These mean more than the others. These are player hosted invitationals. Rory talked about it, the sort of the Legends Slam. I'm still concerned about the short game, but I'm coming off that more and more by the day.
He's gotten better, which is, that's all you wanted. Like he had
strokes gained around the green.
Coaches.
He's 136th on tour, and he's giving up almost a stroke per round. So it's not as though we're way off base.
No, but we're talking about a player who a year or two ago was literally, he was the second worst around the greens on the PGA Tour. It is exceedingly rare to find a player with his caliber and his accomplishments that had such a glaring weakness in his game. So I think the best thing you can say about Viktor Hovland is that the work he's done with Joe Mayo, he's actually seen improvement. He's gone through so many coaches, so many different techniques, and nothing was really working. He would chip and pitch well one round and really not know why he did, and then kind of regress the next day. Like, he actually there's tangible signs of improvement and progress, which I think has to be incredibly rewarding for him. All the hard work. He's one of the hardest workers on the PGA Tour. So to see the work he's done on and around the greens, he's now a very solid putter, as we saw, holding several clutch putts to make sure he got in the playoff with Denny McCarthy. I thought this was huge for Viktor Hovland. Just the confidence to know, hey, my ball striking didn't have to be top notch as it typically did. I have other parts of my game that were able to bail me out, and I thought that was very important. How do you think? You mentioned kind of the stars and a little bit of their game that might not quite be as sharp as they wanted. When you look at LACC, I think for most golf fans, it's going to be largely unknown what to expect there. Talking to the USGA officials that week, like, they were legitimately concerned without rough that you're going to be a 15-20 under par there. Which player that you mentioned among that upper echelon do you feel most confident, I guess, in one week to go?
Like I said, I think Xander, simply because I feel
what has he done this year?
Not a whole lot of anything. And second on that list, and I kind of said concerning about what I saw on Sunday. You take that out, but Patrick Cantlay would be the other one, because based on I did a lot of interviews for kind of a preview story on LACC. He's from LA. He's probably played it more than anyone else, whatever that means. I mean, look, they all show up early. They all have yardage books. They all can learn the golf course. But there's going to be a comfort level there for him. And we don't see Patrick excited very often. When I interviewed him about what to expect, there was an edge to his voice that's normally not there, where you can tell this one means a little bit more than the other ones do. Now, sometimes that doesn't work out very well, but I would put those two sort of ahead of the others. I mean, look, it's hard to ignore Jon Rahm. And the last time they played a West Coast Open, Torrey Pines, he won. We all know his affinity for the grasses, for the place. And I'm not going to be surprised at all to see him in the mix. We've talked a lot about Scottie Scheffler, talked a lot about Rory McIlroy, but it would be Xander and Patrick that I would put on top of my list.
Even more so than Brooks Koepka, who, of the major championships that he's won, traditionally
Don't know,
has
man.
fared the best. Traditionally,
Don't
he
know.
has fared the best in the U.S. Open.
Yeah, but I think this is going to be a different U.S. Open. I don't know. I can't make excuses for Brooks Koepka. I just can't anymore. Like, could he show up and win? Absolutely. I mean, what we saw at the PGA Championship is vintage Brooks. And I think you could probably say the same thing. I mean, Bryson DeChambeau seemed to find something at the PGA as well. Patrick Reed, in the limited chances we've seen him at the Masters and the PGA, has been pretty impressive. All of those guys could. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if any of them. I mean, I make the argument all the time that they were top 10 players. When they left to join Live Golf, they're still top 10 players. I just have such a hard time quantifying them because I don't have the data in front of me that we have for everyone else.
Yeah, they just don't have the head-to-head numbers of what he would do against a Scottie Scheffler or John Rahm with any sort of regularity. However, I do think if you're not putting Brooks Koepka among your top 3 at the major championships for the remainder of the year, you are probably doing it wrong. The only thing that would let me not put Scottie Scheffler as the clear-cut number 1 heading into LACC is if we're looking at this major championship that's going to be 15, 20 under par. Like he's going to have to make the birdies in order to get it there. And I'm just not quite sure whether he can do that. What is that trophy and why are you holding it?
I don't know. It was just sitting here right in front of me. Dayton Amateur. It's the Dayton Amateur Championship trophy. Yeah.
Of course it is. Rex, I know you are not a fervent follower of women's golf, not because you dislike it, but because your hands are tied with lawsuits and other PGA Tour matters. I know you covered the Olympics. That is your one women's golf.
No. I know what you're getting at, and I want to hear your taste because you've been on the Rose wagon for a long time, and you have warned me out.
I think
about
everyone
it.
has. But
I have rolled my eyes at you repeatedly over this one, and I'm going to give you your moment. Trust me, you'll get your 90 seconds to sit and spew. But I just want to say this, that there was a moment, and it was even before the playoff was finished. Like, it seemed pretty clear that Viktor was going to win the playoff at the Memorial, that everyone in the Memorial Media Center asked to have the channel changed because we all wanted to watch it. It was very cool. Now, 90 seconds, go.
I mean,
or 90 minutes, whatever you want.
You could not find a bigger star at a better time for the LPGA. You've had Nelly Korda kind of take a step back this year, dealing with some injuries. Lexi Thompson, now as she gets into her mid-20s, has not panned out how everyone thought. Danielle Kang has suffered through some injuries as well. Like, there is, I think, a void of a young, charismatic, highly popular American player, right? And Rose Zhang, who just turned 20 years old, who has literally won everything at every level. She is essentially the Tiger Woods of women's golf. You look at her junior and amateur resume, she's won everything.
That one makes me uncomfortable. Like, I've heard that a couple of times.
She's won everything. She's won hundreds, plural, hundreds of golf tournaments. Girls Junior, the Junior PGA. She won back-to-back NCAA championships. She's won 12 of 20 times while at Stanford. She won the U.S. Amateur. She won the Augusta National Women's Amateur. She could have won it multiple times. Like, she has checked every single box. And then in her pro debut on the LPGA, to go out and do something that has not been done since 1951. The thing about Rose is she doesn't do anything exceptional well. And that's where I kind of differ with some of these Tiger Woods comparisons and what she can do. She's not exceedingly long. She's not a sharpshooting iron player. She's not the best chipper and putter of the ball on the LPGA, but what she is and what she possesses is this just uncanny golf IQ to not make the mistakes that her fellow playing competitors do. Like, that's kind of her recipe. You'll just look up and she shot 67. You don't really know how or why. And so she's going to have a tremendous career. That is not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination. We're looking at potentially one of the all-time best players if her resume then translates to the program, which, I mean, 72 holes into her pro career, it certainly looks like she's in store for some very special things.
Well, and to your point, she did what Tiger Woods did not do. Tiger Woods did not win his pro debut. So you're right. I think it is. I guess my question back to you, and I'm probably not the one qualified to say this, and I'm only going to base it on some things I saw on social media, like Joe Ogilvy, former tour player, pointed it out. Did the LPGA kind of miss the bus on this? Did they miss the bus in promoting her? I mean, again, I'm very leery of being critical about something that I don't cover and sort of watch intently. But it seems to me there was some pushback on social media.
It seems some pushback. Like you went to the LPGA website and like there wasn't an update within 2 or 3 hours of Rose taking the 54-hole lead, leading by 2 shots. Like that sort of thing is unacceptable. Like she had a media tour heading into her pro debut, but this should not have caught anyone by surprise. Like this should have been months of planning and a rollout to make this as big and as spectacular as possible. It's not like she just decided at the last minute, like, oh, I'm going to turn pro after NCAA's. Like this has been in the works for several months now. She's doing the media blitz now. Like I saw she was on the Today Show. She's the Empire State Building. Like they're kind of maximizing her newfound popularity among the mainstream sports audience. But they need to go full bore, all in on this kid. She's that special. She can handle it. She clearly has the golf. And what I'm really interested in seeing, Rex, is how is she received among her peers? She already had NIL deals in college. Now that she's turned pro, the sponsorship deal, I would fathom a educated guess that she's already making more money than every player who was on the LPGA. And so you factor in that money, the instant success, the popularity that she brings among the audience. You would think if the LPGA is smart that they would dive headlong into her and to make sure that they're promoting her in every single featured group, every single marketing material possible. Will there be any lingering resentment from the best players in the world? Because if you've ever spent any time around Rose Zhang, which I've been fortunate enough to do, if you've read stories about her, if you've seen her on TV clips, like
Humble brag.
she could not be a more delightful human being. But does she engender some jealousy among her peers? I'm very interested to see if that's the case.
I will be curious because, again, if we're doing the Tiger Woods comparison, and this is easy.
A lot of jealousy.
This is easy a couple decades down the road. Yes, I'm sure there was, but I think that jealousy turned to appreciation in not a long period of time. Because, again, and you can find tour pros at every event who concede the fact that we should cut Tiger Woods 10% of our checks. Like they all understand that we are where we are because of Tiger Woods. And I think at some point, if she is what you seem to think, and a lot of people seem to think she is, I would hope that the same sort of metamorphosis would happen on the LPGA, where you realize that a rising tide, all boats, man. I mean, and if this is going to be that rising tide, then let's go out and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's certainly a great point. And I'm very curious to see where we go from here. I mean, she's already like a single name star. You can put her in the same category as
Rose,
a Tiger, a Rory, a Jordan, a Nelly, a Lydia. Like everyone just knows Rose. She's literally an emoji. Like it did not take long. It took 72 holes before she is one of the most recognizable players on the LPGA. Fascinated to see where we go from here. Still just 20 years old, now a full member of the LPGA, which of course she can be eligible for the Solheim Cup end of this year. She's a no-brainer pick for that American team, which certainly just got better. Can't wait to cover that tournament in a couple of months' time. Rex, you were flying back home on Tuesday, and then we leave for U.S. Open. You and I both on Monday morning. The next podcast we do will be live from LACC. What do you have planned for the rest of the week? More importantly, what are you throwing on the grill?
I don't know that I'm throwing anything on the grill. Saturday is my birthday. Bunkmate reached out to me. Yes.
Happy early birthday.
Much. Yeah, I appreciate that. Bunkmate reached out. She wants to know what we want to do for the birthday. So I think we're going to the beach for a couple of days with some friends and the kiddies. And so I don't know if I'll have a chance. I'm hoping, we've covered this before.
What is Bunk going to get you for the birthday? I'm dying to know.
I'm hoping a Blackstone, but we all know that's just going to be another big TV. And I'll be like,
second TV. Double screen in the bedroom.
A 70-inch in the bathroom. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what we needed. Yes, it's probably not going to be a Blackstone, which is so sad. I think I sent you a picture a couple weeks ago about me doing smash burgers on my little tiny skillet on the grill.
Never seen a more pathetic sight. Fingers crossed.
What do you got going on?
Fingers crossed that Bunk will bail you out there and that you will finally, mercifully, get that Blackstone. Big news, speaking of grills, for me as well, I'm finally placing the order for the offset smoker that I've been teasing for several months now. Did a lot of hand wringing, did a lot of perseverating over what I was actually going to get. I've finally decided, Rex, to get what is called a Workhorse 1969. It is an absolutely beautiful smoker. The difference between that and the Shirley that I was looking at, it's a direct flow smoker as opposed to the reverse flow, which is what the Shirley is. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I follow all the barbecue pit masters on Instagram. I've made no bones about it. I'm a wannabe barbecue influencer. All these guys have a direct flow pit, and so I felt like I wouldn't be a real man if I did not get one. So I'm placing an order. So it's in the back left. I have like an empty quadrant. Wife is really not happy about this, Rex. I'm not gonna lie. She's not happy that we are going to be polluting the outdoor kitchen with what is a bit of a tank. It's like 750, 800 pounds. That's going to be in the back left corner. But look, YOLO. I could die next year. I could die in 5 years. I want to do what makes me happy.
Wow, that's dark. All right.
It is, but YOLO. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to sell any of the other grills. Wife, I cannot stress this enough, is not happy. Even though I've sold stuff, I've moved stuff around, took on freelance gigs. Like, it's not coming out of the budget. She just doesn't like the optics.
It's not coming out of the budget.
This would be my 8th smoker in the backyard. Yeah, it's certainly an addiction. But what are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it? I will say this, and I can't give away any secrets here. But this is more. Please reach out to us. Let us know. You guys are great about getting back to us. What would you guys feel about if we were to get a sponsor that we would have to wear a jacket?
A red jacket. Not a green jacket.
Sure, a red jacket. It wouldn't be a green jacket. That's ridiculous.
We would certainly take a green jacket if one were offered.
Yes, that's right. But give us your thoughts on how if we did these podcasts in a red jacket, is it going to take away our credibility? Is it going to make Lavner look silly? Like, let us know.
Anything more than I already would. I'm not fully opposed to it. We'd throw it on at the end.
I didn't say I was opposed to it.
All that matters to me, Rex, is getting this sponsored by either an alcohol company or a barbecue company. Don't really care which one it is, preferably both. And send us free samples. We will be the greatest pitchman you've ever had. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. Make sure you guys check out Golf Channel for all of our reports from golf's longest day. Make sure you golfchannel.com for all the news and updates from the RBC Canadian Open. Rory McIlroy is the defending champion. We'll be back next week. Special pod. Do the preview pod on Tuesday, LACC. And then, Rex, drumroll please. Mini pods each and every night from the U.S. Open. You are not actually leaving this one early. You'll be able to see this one through to the conclusion on Sunday night. Look forward to that. Thank you guys for listening to this edition. We'll talk to you next week live from LA.
It's called a Blackstone, Buckman. Look it up.